Have you ever felt like you made a bad decision and couldn't even explain why? What if I told you that maybe you never actually chose anything at all? Watch out for what you think. According to David Hume, one of the greatest minds in philosophy of mind, our mind isn't some neutral court of logic and facts. It's a stage, a kind of inner theater where our choices are really just scenes in a play that's already been scripted by our passions and desires. What's worse is that most of us don't even notice we're just acting out a script. For Hume, human beings aren't masters of reason. We're emotional creatures that use reason mainly to justify what we already feel. In the eternal battle between reason and emotion, emotion rules, and reason just follows along. David Hume believed, reason is a slave to the passions. The self is an illusion created to organize our inner chaos. The relationship between cause and effect is just a mental habit we repeat without realizing. And the most unsettling of all, we don't control our thoughts. They control us. Pause. Breathe. How many times have you thought you were making a free decision, but in reality, you were just a prisoner of your emotions and impulses? If this makes you think, drop a comment saying, "I needed to hear this." I want to see who else recognizes this silent battle between reason and emotion. Today we're going behind the scenes. I'm going to show you the 5 biggest mind traps, quiet little tricks that shape your choices without you even noticing. Get ready. You're definitely going to see yourself in at least 3 of these traps. And the 5th, it's so invisible that even the greatest geniuses in history fell for it without realizing. Watch out for what you think. Once you understand what David Hume revealed about the philosophy of mind and the true role of reason and emotion in your choices, you'll never again blindly trust your own thoughts. Take a deep breath and come with me, because what you're about to discover could change forever how you see your own decisions. Chapter 1. The first mind trap, the illusion of choice. How many times have you believed you were freely choosing? Switching jobs, ending a relationship, accepting an offer. How many of those decisions were truly yours? And how many were just echoes of impulses, habits, or fears you didn't even realize you had? David Hume was crystal clear. The mind's greatest illusion is believing it's in charge of its own choices. But if the mind isn't in charge, then who is? Today you'll see that what feels like free will is often nothing more than a conditioned response, and how it all happens will blow your mind. If this makes sense to you so far, comment, "Makes sense," below. I want to know if you've already felt this in your own life. What did Hume say about choices? Hume challenged the comfortable idea that we're rational, cold beings who make decisions based on pure reason. In his view, it's actually the opposite. We feel first, then rationalize. Meaning, the real decision happens deep down, on an emotional level, and only afterward does our mind kick in to invent a logical explanation for what we already wanted to do. You know when you say you bought something because it was on sale? In reality, the emotional decision to want that item had already happened. The brain just came up with a logical excuse. It was an unmissable deal, so it wouldn't have to confront the raw desire. That also goes for relationships. How many times have you felt you should break up but spent days or weeks coming up with rational reasons to justify a decision that, emotionally, was already made? What's really happening backstage in your mind? According to Hume, your mind is like a theater. On the stage you see the characters, reason, logic, common sense. But backstage the ones writing the script are invisible forces. Emotions, memories, traumas, unconscious desires. The play was already written before you ever thought about it. Picture this. You get an amazing job offer, but it's in another city. Before you list out pros and cons, your mind has already triggered an emotional reaction. Fear of change, missing home, anxiety about the unknown. So when you start thinking it over, in reality you're just trying to justify the feeling that came first. Ever experienced that? Thinking you were calmly analyzing, but deep down you already knew your answer? Comment, "That happened to me." If you've been there, I want to see how many are awake to this. Why do we believe we choose freely? Humans need to believe we have control. It's a survival mechanism. If we plainly admitted that many of our decisions come from forces we can't control, we'd have a psychological meltdown. That's why the mind invents rational explanations for its choices, to protect our identity, our sense of autonomy. Hume said humans are driven by habits, automatic associations, and passions. Reason is just the secretary. It tidies up the mess after the party's over. Now, I want to invite you to reflect. How many choices have you made in the last few months? Which of them felt logical, but were actually emotional deep down? When did you realize, maybe too late, that you were just acting out a script already written? Close your eyes for 5 seconds and revisit an important decision you made recently. Try to recall how you felt before you thought about it. If you identified even one decision like that, comment, "I saw it," below. Let's create a space for reflection together. It's not just philosophy. Modern science backs Hume up. Neuroscience studies show our brains make decisions up to 7 seconds before we're consciously aware of them. Experiments led by Benjamin Libet in the 1980s proved that when we think we're choosing, the brain has already sent the signal long before. 7 seconds. So by the time you believe you're deciding, it's already happened. And that changes everything, right? Because if our thoughts and decisions are pre-programmed by impulses, who are we really? Stick with me because in the next chapter we're opening that Pandora's box even further. The first big mind trap is this: believing we're in control of our choices when we're often just rationalizing emotional decisions that have already been made. If you think that's bad news, I'd say it's actually liberating. Because when you understand how the mind works, you stop being an unconscious slave and start being a conscious observer of your own story. David Hume didn't want you to give up hope. He wanted you to wake up. If this shook you, comment, "I'm waking up." And share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really behind their choices. That's only the first illusion. In the next chapter, we're diving into the second big trap: the self is a fiction. If you thought choice was an illusion, wait till you find out the idea of who you are might just be a story your mind made up. Chapter 2. The second mind trap. The self is a fiction. If you were already unsettled by finding out your choices might not be as free as you imagined, get ready, because this is even deeper. What if I told you that you, this self you feel so strongly, is just an illusion? David Hume believed that the idea of a fixed, solid, permanent self is a mental invention, a psychological trick we use to make sense of the chaotic flow of thoughts, sensations, and memories. Does that jar you? Comment, "I'm in shock" if you're feeling this reality check too. What did Hume say about the self? Hume noticed that when we try to look inside ourselves to find that supposed self dwelling in our mind, all we find is a nonstop flow of perceptions, memories, emotions, sensations, thoughts, all constantly shifting. There is no fixed me. There's only a series of fleeting impressions that the mind stitches together like a continuous story. Think about the person you were 10 years ago. Are you the exact same person? Your tastes have changed, your opinions have evolved, your fears, dreams, and worldview, all different. So who is the you that stuck around? Hume would say, it's just a narrative, a story your mind tells to maintain the illusion of continuity. The mind's flow, picture a river. The water is never the same. Every second, new molecules pass through. Still, we call that moving stream a river, like it's a single solid thing. Your mind is that river. You're not a thing, you're a process. Close your eyes for a second and try to find something inside you that's never changed. Not memories, not sensations, not ideas. Something that's always stayed exactly the same. Find it? If you can't, congratulations. You just experienced what Hume theorized centuries ago. If that got you thinking, drop a comment saying, "I found the flow." Modern neuroscience backs up Hume's intuition. Research shows the human brain is extremely plastic. It changes physically with experiences, learning, and emotions. The you of today is literally different from the you of yesterday, neurologically speaking. Studies in neuroplasticity demonstrate that in just 8 weeks of practices like meditation, the brain measurably changes, strengthening areas related to attention, empathy, and memory. In other words, your self is mutable. It's a process, it's an event, not an entity. Amazing, right? If you've ever felt that intuitively, comment, "I always knew." If the self is a fiction, why does it exist? Hume would say we need it to survive. If every new sensation created a brand new identity, it would be impossible to function. The self is a mental shortcut that gives us a sense of stability. It's like a movie. Hundreds of individual frames flick by, but the brain interprets it as one continuous sequence. Without this illusion, our emotional and social lives would collapse. Imagine waking up every morning feeling like a completely different person, with no memories or sense of continuity. It'd be impossible to maintain relationships, make plans, or even recognize yourself in the mirror. Now think, who would you be without the memories you carry? Who would you be without the name you were given? Who would you be if you could right now let go of all the labels you use to describe yourself? Close your eyes and just sense it. Is there some essence beyond the stories? If this reflection moved you, comment, "I am more than my stories." Let's see how many of us are trying to see beyond the narrative. The second big mind trap is this: believing there's a fixed, stable, permanent self, when in reality, we're a stream of ever-changing experiences. We're not statues, we're rivers. And seeing that isn't a call to despair, it's a call to freedom. When you grasp that the self is fluid, you stop clinging to old labels, old pains, old stories that no longer make sense. You can reinvent yourself. You can be new. Every single day. If that hits home, comment, "I choose to be new." And share this video with someone who needs that freedom too, but we're not done yet. If choices are illusions, if the self is a fiction, how can we trust anything we think? In the next chapter, we'll explore the third big mind trap. Cause and effect are mental habits. And trust me, this is the hardest one to swallow, because it challenges our whole idea of logic and predictability. Chapter 3, the third mind trap. Cause and effect are mental habits. If it's already tough to accept your choices aren't so free, if it's already unsettling to think the self is just a narrative, get ready for this. We're about to topple another seemingly unshakable certainty that things happen because of clear cause and effect relationships. David Hume argued, with a boldness few have matched, that there is no inherent link between cause and effect in the real world. That link exists only in your mind. If you're already curious or uneasy, comment, "I need to understand this." The illusion of connection. You see one billiard ball hit another and the second ball moves. Automatically you think, the first ball caused the second one to move. But did you actually see the cause? Or did you just see one event followed by another, and your mind inferred a connection? For Hume, all we really have are successive impressions, event A, then event B. Cause is an expectation in our minds based on past experience. You flip a switch, and the light turns on. You don't really see electricity traveling through the wires. All you see is a pattern repeated so many times that the brain sets a rule, a cause is B. But you never directly see that invisible link between one event and the next. You just believe it's there. The mind's pattern building, the human mind hates randomness. So it creates patterns, connections, explanations. When something happens once, twice, 100 times, we assume it'll always happen that way. But that's just a psychological habit. How many times did you think you knew what was going to happen? And then life showed you otherwise? Belief in causality is practical. It helps us survive. But it can also fool us, trapping us in assumptions that were never guaranteed. If you've ever had a moment where things turned out totally differently than the sure thing you expected, comment, "I've been there." Modern physics, especially quantum mechanics, backs up Hume's skepticism of causality. In the quantum realm, events can occur without a clear cause. Particles can pop in and out of existence with no deterministic explanation. There are events that correlate with each other without any visible transfer of energy or information, what we call quantum entanglement. So even at the most fundamental level of reality, Our everyday idea of cause and effect doesn't hold up like we think. In the famous double-slit experiment, photons, particles of light, behave like waves or particles depending on how we observe them, completely breaking classic ideas of linear causality. That changes everything. Because if even physics can't guarantee fixed cause and effect relationships, what else might our minds be making up to feel safe? Stick with me, because we're going deeper. The simple and brutal answer: it's survival. If you see a rustling bush and connect it to a predator, even with no proof, you increase your chances of survival. The human brain evolved to see patterns and create connections, even when they're not really there. Ever seen someone knock on wood so they won't jinx themselves? Or wear a lucky shirt for an important interview? Rituals, superstitions, habits. These are all examples of how the mind invents cause and effect links to reduce anxiety about the unknown. Have, or had, a ritual like that? Comment, "I believed," if you're willing to own up to it. Now think about it. Which cause and effect relationships do you believe in today? Are they all based on solid evidence or just mental repetition? Close your eyes and sense it. Where in your life are you stuck in certainties that might never have been guaranteed? If this reflection hit you, comment, "Seeing things differently." The third big mind trap is this: believing the connection between events is guaranteed, when in reality it's just a mental habit based on past repetition. But don't despair. This is a call to live with more humility in the face of uncertainty. A call to act with courage, even when there are no guarantees. Because life, deep down, has always been risk, movement, and mystery. If that moved you, comment, "I choose to act without guarantees," and share this video with anyone who needs to break free from false certainties. Now, let me ask you, if causes are illusions, if the self is made up, if our choices get hijacked by impulses, how can we trust what we feel? In the next chapter, we'll talk about the fourth big mind trap. Emotions feel true, but they aren't always. Here, we enter the most dangerous territory of all. Chapter 4. The fourth mind trap. Emotions feel true, but they aren't always. If everything we've covered so far is already unsettling, buckle up. Because now we're talking about something most people assume is infallible: emotions. How many times have you heard stuff like, "Follow your heart"? If you felt it, it must be true. But what if not everything you feel reflects reality? What if your emotions in many cases are just a biased interpretation, an echo of your fears, beliefs, and internal stories? If this is already making your mind spin, comment, "I need to know more." Emotions, truths or interpretations. For David Hume, emotions are extremely powerful. Yes, they really do drive human behavior. But that doesn't mean they always reflect reality as it is. Often they reflect how your mind interpreted reality. Let's say someone ignores you on the street. Instantly you feel anger and create a story. "They're snubbing me. They must dislike me." Is that definitely true? Or could they have been distracted, worried, or maybe just didn't see you? Your anger was real, but the interpretation triggering that anger might have been totally off. Emotions as lenses, not mirrors. Emotions aren't mirrors showing the world as it is. They're lenses, sometimes distorted, sometimes tinted, sometimes blurry. Hume would say, "What we feel says more about ourselves than about reality." Think about a time you felt rejected, betrayed, or humiliated. Looking back with some perspective, was it really what it seemed in that moment? If you've ever gone through something like that, comment, "I saw it differently later." As with causality, our emotional system evolved to keep us alive. Fear makes us run from danger. Anger gives us the strength to fight. Sadness makes us withdraw so we can heal. The issue is that in modern life, our primitive emotional systems still kick in. Even if the danger is an Instagram comment, a late text message, or a disagreement in opinions. Your boss criticizes your work. Your emotional brain treats it like a threat of being kicked out of your tribe, which for our ancestors meant death. You feel anger, shame, or fear. even though rationally you might realize it's just a minor critique. In other words, emotions respond to an old map, not the real territory. Research in emotional neuroscience shows that most emotional reactions fire off before our rational mind can interpret the situation. A famous study by psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett suggests that emotions are constructed by the mind, not universal automatic reactions. That means what you feel is shaped by your culture, your beliefs, and your past experiences. For instance, sadness might be expressed through crying in one culture and through total silence in another. If emotions can be that malleable, is your emotional truth really the absolute truth? Stick around, this goes even deeper. A quick reflection. What was the last strong emotion you felt? Now ask yourself, was my interpretation the only possible way to see that situation? Take that feeling and imagine other ways to explain what happened. Notice how that changes the intensity of the emotion. If this reflection opened your mind, comment, "I choose to observe before reacting." The fourth big mind trap is this: believing every emotion reveals objective truth, when most of the time, they just reflect our subjective interpretation. Realizing this is like a superpower, because when you stop being ruled by automatic feelings, you start owning your responses. You feel them, but you don't drown in them. You live them, but don't lose yourself. If this shifted how you view emotions, comment, "I choose to feel consciously," and share this video with someone who needs that inner strength. Now, a question. If we don't fully control our choices, if the self is just a story, if cause and effect are mental habits, and if our emotions can fool us, is there anything we can really rely on? In the next chapter, we'll talk about the fifth and final big mind trap. Control is an illusion. Get ready. This one's not for the faint of heart. Chapter 5. The fifth mind trap. Control is an illusion. Have you noticed how much we try to control everything? Control the future, control people, control our feelings, our thoughts, our reactions. But what if the idea of control is the biggest, most dangerous illusion of all? David Hume, with his radical and realistic view of human nature, warned us, the belief in total control is just a defense mechanism against our fear of uncertainty. If that thought alone makes you breathe a little deeper, comment, "I feel it." Let's get through this last big trap together. Our human need for control. We're taught from a young age to pursue control. Control your grades in school, control your body and your emotions, control your career path, control your relationships. We hear mantras like, "If you really want it, you can achieve it. You alone are responsible for your destiny." But does life really bow to our wishes? How many times did you plan every detail but life took you somewhere else? How many times did you do everything right and it still went wrong? How many people do you know who followed all the rules, studied hard, worked hard, did the right things, and still faced crisis, illness, loss? Think of a time when everything got out of hand. What did you learn when you were forced to let go? If you've been through that, comment, "I learned the hard way." Control is a feeling, not a reality, Hume helps us see. We don't control most external events. We can only really manage our perceptions and responses, and even then, only somewhat. That sense of control we feel is subjective, not an actual guarantee. You can drive carefully, obey all traffic laws. Does it reduce the risk? Yes. Does it eliminate it? Never. An irresponsible driver could show up. A mechanical fault could happen or a freak accident. Behavioral psychology describes something called the illusion of control, our tendency to overestimate our ability to influence outcomes that are largely out of our hands. A famous 1975 study by Ellen Langer showed that people believed they could affect the outcome of a chance-based game just by willpower, even when it was purely random. In other words, what we call control is often just the mind's trick to lower anxiety in the face of the unknown. And if we accept that we don't control everything, maybe life gets a little lighter? Now take a moment and think, in which parts of your life are you forcing control? What would happen if you relaxed a bit, not giving up, but flowing more? Imagine living while seeking excellence. but without clinging desperately to one fixed idea of how everything must go. If that idea resonates, comment, "I choose to flow" below. Let's share this sense of freedom, control versus responsibility. Here's a key point. Accepting that control is an illusion doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. You're still responsible for your choices, your actions, your attitude toward life. But realizing you can't control everything sets you free. Free from crippling guilt. Free from toxic shame. Free from the arrogance of thinking the world should bend to your plans. You do your best, and let life's flow handle the rest. The fifth and final mind trap is this: believing that if we do everything right, we can control all outcomes. We can't. And that's okay. Because life's beauty is in the mystery, in the dance between intention and the unexpected. If that message resonated with you, comment, "I trust life," and send this video to someone who needs to let go of the weight of control. Now you know, our choices aren't always our own. The self is a story, not a thing. Cause and effect are mental habits, not guarantees. Emotions don't always show the truth. Control is just a feeling, not a fact. So what do we do with all this? We don't despair. We wake up. We live more consciously, more humbly, more freely. If this journey touched you, comment, "I'm waking up to myself." And if you want to go even deeper, stick around for our next videos, where we'll explore how to live consciously in a world full of illusions. This conversation isn't over yet. If this got to you, the next video will move you even more. Click here and keep going with me.